this is part 3 of the apple bag series. This part 3 is long overdue, but I just got around to fully finishing the bags how I wanted to. So in this part of the video, I'm going to be showing you how to add a worm to your bag and a leaf. I'm also going to be showing you how to line the bag. I'm going to use 2 different methods, so I have this one here as well. This is the original apple bag that I created, and it has a lining. And you can see the stitch lines because I used the machine for this one, and I also used an easier method to get the fabric in there. And then the second method is going to be different because I constructed a completely different bag. So this one has a granny strap, but for this lining I tried to create, if you'll notice, this bag is a little bit more boxy than this bag, and I think this one just kind of got flattened out because it's been like over a year and it just sits in my closet. But this one was freshly made, so I wanted to try and keep the boxiness of the bag, and so I lined it in 3 parts, kind of like how I constructed the bag. One more thing that I'm quite excited about is that I created a written pattern for this apple bag. It's on Etsy for purchase, so if you're interested in supporting me in that way, or if you just want to, create the apple bag faster because, watching the video takes a long time, you can buy that. I have it linked in the description. I can still make the bag with the videos, and that is also, supporting my creation of this bag. But I had a couple people ask for the written pattern, and I kind of felt like the videos were just not as clear maybe as I wanted them to be, so I went back through, and that's when I created this bag. It is a little bit different. There's really not a lot of difference. The seeds look a little bit different, I would say. These ones look a little more pointy. And then the only other difference is that in the videos, each round starts here and works around, and I just thought that was weird, so I started here and work around now. So the pattern in the video is slightly different in the construction, but all of the stitches are the same. If you're interested, that is down in the description. But let's go on and get into the worm, the leaf, and the lining. So the first thing you're going to do is make a slip knot, and then we're going to chain 7. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In the second chain, you're going to single crochet. In the next chain, you're going to half double crochet. Then you're going to put 2 double crochets in the next stitch. One double crochet in the next stitch. Half double crochet in the next stitch. And single crochet in the last stitch. So that is half of the leaf. And now we're just going to work down the other side. So we just ended in this stitch. We're going to place 1 more single crochet in that stitch to turn, and then we're actually going to place 1 more in that stitch as well. And that's 1 on this side of the leaf, 1 to turn, and 1 on the new side. So single crochet, next stitch is half double. The next stitch is a double crochet. Then we have 2 double crochets in the same stitch. half double crochet in the next stitch, and single crochet in the last stitch, and that should bring you back to the top. And then you're just going to slip stitch to the first stitch. Now if you like your leaf like this, you can leave it and just do a couple chains for the stem. I actually kind of like that, but I'm going to show you the other way that I had it as well. So from here, you're just going to insert your hook into the center of the leaf, and then you just slip stitch down the leaf on top of the stitches. All the way to the end. And then you can do a couple chains. And then you have this type of leaf. I actually think that I liked it without the chains down the middle. So I'm just gonna chain like 4 and pull it through. And that is my leaf. Okay, next we're going to make this worm. So once again, you can use any color that you want. I did like the yellow because it matches the granny strap and I just thought it looked nice. You're going to create a slip knot again. And I would recommend maybe leaving a longer tail for sewing here. So make your slip knot and you're going to chain 12. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. If you want to make your your worm longer or shorter, just add or remove some chains. In the second chain, you're going to place a half double crochet and a single crochet, and then slip stitch also into that stitch, and that makes the little head. And then you're just going to slip stitch all the way down the body of the worm. Chain 1 when you get to the end and cut your yarn, again leaving a bit of a long tail. So there we have the little head and the body of the worm. Now I'm just gonna embroider the little face on like I did this one. So I'm just grabbing a little bit of, this is embroidery floss, some black and red, and I'm gonna grab my needle. I'm gonna start with the eyes. And on the last one I only put one eye. I think I'm going to put 2 eyes on this one. So I'm just going to go up through the back, leave a tail in the back, and go back down. And just adjust, going back and forth, creating some stitches until I'm happy with how it looks. See, there we go. I'm pretty happy with that eye. I'm just going to do one more. I kind of created like a triangle shape that you can't really see. It looks more like a circle, but it makes sure that I fill in all the spaces there. Okay, pretty pleased with that. I'm just going to flip it over and tie a knot. And then cut that off. Now we're just going to add the mouth. Same thing, come up through the back, leave a tail and sew it on there. And that's what we're gonna go with. I like that. I think it looks cute. And once again, we're just gonna tie the knot on the back. Okay. And here we have our silly little worm. So now that you have your worms, you can make one for either side of the bag. And same with the leaves, you're going to want to make one of those for either sides of the bag. We're going to sew those on. So I'm just going to take the tail of that leaf and I'm just going to sew it into the brown stem. I want it to be kind of floopy. I don't want it to be too floopy though. So I am going to try and tack it down. There we go. So I do want it to flop around a little bit. Just kind of get it on there however you can. There's really no science. You just sew until it stays how you want it. The worm is going to be a lot more difficult to figure out where I want it. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the longer tail that I left for the worm, and I'm going to sew it through the back of him up to the front. Because then we will have a tail on either side, helping us get the worm how we like it. We're going to put the worm where we want it on the bag. I think I want him to be kind of at the bottom here. And like I said, this is going to be difficult, especially putting it at the bottom of the bag. So we're just going to sew the head down where you want the head. And then you can fiddle with the body in a moment. So get the head, hide the ends, sew that down just by going down and up through the bag. Just make sure you're only going through the top layer of the bag. Yeah. Just sewing the little head in. Whoopsies. Taking care to hide these little embroidery ends. Okay, so I sewed the head on. I left the tail back there for now. What I'm going to do next is transfer to this tail that's on the butt. And what we're going to do is we're going to scrunch up the worm how we want him. And then we're going to tack the butt into place where it is. And that'll make it easier to go and sew this after the front and the bottom are down. Okay, so here's our leaf and the worm sewn down onto the bag. Just be careful because this is the back of my bag. I accidentally sewed those guys onto the back. But it doesn't really matter to me. But just go ahead and keep a lookout for that when you sew your bag. We are going to sew the lining into both of these bags. So I have the previous bag from the first tutorial, the second bag, and they are a little bit different. This one's older, and so it's a little bit more floopy, and so the sides have flattened quite a bit. And this bag is really flat. And then we also have just the regular red strap. I also already have the button on this bag, so that'll make making the lining a little bit different. This bag I just made like 2 days ago, and it still kind of has a boxy shape. Whether that's because it's new and I haven't flattened it out in the closet, or I just used maybe a bit of a firmer yarn this time. because some size 4 yarns are really soft, some are a little bit coarser, like Red Heart yarn, and Karen is pretty tough too, I feel like. And Big Twist is really soft. This does not have a button yet. It does have the buttonhole, so we'll have to work with that. And then it has the granny straps. So with these granny straps, there's not going to be one color of thread that will hide under all the yarn. So I'm probably going to hand sew the strap lining. Where for this one, if I can just find a nice red, I don't have to hand sew. So I'm going to start with the easier of the two first. So what I'm going to do is I need to lay the fabric out. And if you were wondering, I got 1.5 yards, which is probably overkill. But so I'm going to lay this down, and I'm actually going to fold it good sides together. And then we're going to lay down the apple. Oh. So we're going to need 2 panels of the bottom. So for this bag, I'm going to flatten it out. Flatten. Make sure everything's straight. And I'm going to trace with my chalk exactly where this bag ends. This is not where we're going to cut, but this is just going to give us the perfect outline of this apple. Taking care to flatten it out as you go so that you account for all of the space. Okay, so once you get to the top here, the strap's going to be in the way, but you're just going to kind of mark where it cuts across, and then you can resume in the corner here, tracing the top of the apple. And you want to ignore the stem, so you're gonna have to lift it up and kind of pretend the stem is not there. Go all the way across, and then cut here, and then okay, so then you've got almost all of it. You just have to fill in the spot where it cuts across, and just kind of eyeball it and cut it in just like that. So this is the outline of the apple. So now the only thing you need to do next is, I'm going to use a different color for this, is you need to cut about 1/2 inch in from that, and that's going to be our seam allowance. That is where we cut the fabric. And I'm just eyeballing it because I'm too lazy to get out the measuring tape, but just make sure it's even. But you don't really have to be exact because we know the line that we're going to sew on already. So we have the blue line, which is the width of the bag. We have the green line, which is where we're going to cut. So I'm going to get my rotary cutter, and I'm going to cut on the green line. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take it and lay it on top here and roughly make sure that that blue line matches up where I want it. If you think it's too tall, that's okay, because this part is the part that we hem later, and you can cut more of that off at a later time. You just want to make sure it's not too wide. This one's a little wide on this side, so I'm just gonna redraw that blue line. Where the edge of the bag actually is, because this is hanging off too much. And you want the seam to lay on the bag. What we're going to do is you're going to sew from the top here all the way down this line, down this line, down this blue line, on the adjusted blue line, all the way off the top of this. So sew with a straight stitch along that line. So I sewed with red thread that matches this. It doesn't really have to match at this point, but I just didn't want to have to switch the thread twice. So I just loaded it up with the red that I'm going to be using. I'm going to stick it in the bag, and I'm going to make sure it lines up inside the bag how I would like. Because now would be the time to make any adjustments. Is it wide enough? Is it too wide? Is there too much fabric floating around? And it's okay if there's a bunch hanging off the top, like I said, because we can just trim it for when we do the hem. So that seems honestly perfect. If you're happy with it, or if you want to take it in on the sides more, you can do that. But now I'm just going to take a zigzag stitch along the edge. Okay, so I did an overlocking stitch. Now I'm just going to trim around that. So now we're just going to shove that inside again. This needs to be trimmed down quite a bit. And what we need to do is I'm going to start on the side here. So you're going to take the side and fold it over and pin it into place. Just like that. You're going to do that the whole way around. And so I'm going to start with the sides and the corners. So I'm just going to go up under the button like that. And then just fold the rest of it around. I have no science to this at all. Alright, it took a minute, but I have pinned the whole top in how I like it. Oh my gosh. Ignore that, because we're not actually even ready for that part yet. We have to do the strap first. So you can just set that off to the side. So the next thing I'm going to do is just measure how long and how wide this strap is. I'm going to need my fabric again. We're going to mark, once again, just the width of the strap. Keep unrolling this down the line here. So we've got the outline of the width of the strap plus the seam allowance. And what we're going to do is we're going to fold over that line, and I'm going to iron it down. I actually think I left too much seam allowance. I forgot to mention, you want to leave a little bit extra on either side. So you should have the length of the strap plus a little bit on either end. So I went back through and I trimmed my seam allowance down to about 1/4 inch, because all I'm going to do is fold it over once. going to take it, we're going to fold it in half, we're going to fold the strap, find the middle of that, place the middle of this on the middle of that, and from there we're just going to pin that on. It doesn't have to be good or exact, just to hold the place there. And then same thing that we did with the outside is you're gonna line it up. And the reason we left some to extend, even though I left a lot. So you're just gonna drag it from the middle here. And you want the strap, see this is a little bit too big, because I want the lining to be on the inside a little bit. So it's easy to make adjustments once it's kind of already. Pin it down. And then once you get to that point, you just lift up the inside lining and shove that strap under it. And that hides the ends. Now I'm just gonna sew down the left side of the strap here. And I'm actually going to remove this center stitch because I'm going to sew just a tiny bit down into the lining. So pull that back to sew down into there. I finished the sewing around the strap, and then once I did that, I just made sure I tucked it in. And then I sewed all the way around the top, taking care not to sew over top of the stem. That is the lining for the apple bag. Now I just need to get the buttonhole. So what I'm going to do is, now that everything's lined up, I'm just going to cut fabric. And yeah, I don't know if this is a great idea, but so I'm gonna take a needle and some thread, and I'm just gonna take this and, you know, thread it through the stem here, right along where the edge of the buttonhole is. Yeah, and I'm just gonna try and just kind of hem this hole that I cut around the buttonhole. Just trying to fold it so that it doesn't fray. So this is the buttonhole. It's not perfect, like I said, but button fits through there, and yeah. And then I sewed the button back on to the other side, just using a needle and thread. Right over top of the fabric, but underneath the stem. And now we have the finished bag with a lining. For this second bag, I'm going to start with the strap. I'm going to start tonight because I'm going to hand sew this polka dot onto the strap. So once again, you're just going to lay your strap down, and you need to cut a strip that's the length of the strap plus a little bit extra to extend into the bag. I'm just going to leave about 1/4 inch on either side, and this is nice because the polka dots help me know where to cut. And I'm just going to cut all the way down this strip. So it's the next day, and I did a double fold on this strap, which I probably should have done on the other strap, but we are double folding, and then I'm going to hand sew it into the bag somehow. I don't really know how to hand sew, so I don't feel like I'm a good person to give you a best strategy there. I'm just kind of gonna go to town. So I hand sewed the lining of the strap into place. Now we just have to do the inside. What we need to do is we need to trace the width of this and the length. I'm gonna leave about a 1/2 inch seam allowance on the top here on either side. And then for the sides, I'm just gonna leave a 1/4 inch. The width of the strap plus a 1/4 on the sides and a 1/2 inch on the top. So this blue line is the width of the actual strap, and then the green is the 1/4 inch seam allowance and the 1/4 inch here. And then I did leave about 1/2 inch on either side. I just didn't actually mark that. And so you can just cut that out along the seam allowance of the strap. Okay, so we have the bottom of the bag cut out. And now we basically need to do a very similar process for the apple shape. So I'm just gonna lay it down. And the first thing I'm gonna do is just trace so I folded it over as much as I need here. And we're just gonna lay the bag down, and you're gonna do your best attempt to trace the size of the panels. So if you can see here, this is the front panel, this is the strap, which means this is where the back panel starts. And just make sure you leave enough space for that 1/4 inch and the 1/2 inch on the top. So you're gonna leave 1/2 inch on the top and a 1/4 inch on the sides. First, we're just gonna trace the actual bag. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna grab our second color and we're gonna add that 1/2 inch on the top and the 1/4 inch all the way around the rest of it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and cut that out as well. Seeing that I've doubled it, I now have my front and my back apple. This is certainly a little bit rough. But I think the general shape is there. I now have both sides of this bag here. The last thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get some interfacing to sew on the inside of this to thicken up the base a little bit. So I just had this interfacing. It's just a light interfacing. You can find that at Joann's. They sell it on rolls just like fabric. So you can buy it by the yard, or you can buy like little packs of it as well. I don't remember what type it is. So I cut out 2 strips because that's just how wide it already was. I didn't want to have to like unroll it or anything. So I just laid the one down and it made it to about here. And then I have laid the second one on top. I don't really know how it goes if you lay interfacing on top of interfacing, but if all goes well, this will work out really well because the bottom of the bag then will have extra thickness there. So all I have to do is I just have to iron this onto the fabric, and then we will be ready to sew the pieces together. So I actually retraced a new one that I think will work a little bit better. But now what we're gonna do is we're gonna find the middle of our bottom half piece, and we are going to pin that to the middle of the apple, and then we're just gonna hem and line up the bottom of this all the way here and all the way here. And then we're going to sew that with our 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. I completed the sewing. So now we have the bag, but it is boxy, which is different from the last time we constructed the lining. So we've got this box shape. So I'm just gonna stick it in. So honestly, if it's to your liking, now you just have to fold over the edges and either hand sew or manually sew the lining in. And I think I'm just gonna hand sew it. And then I will show you the finished product. Just make sure that you fold that strap that we left on the inside again. So that is both bags lined and completely finished. Well, not completely. I will say I have not added the buttonhole to this bag, but honestly, I'm gonna keep this one, so I don't know if I'm gonna do a buttonhole actually. I don't know, maybe I'll do like a official buttonhole on the machine. So we've got the lining all sewn in and the worm and the leaf. And then this is the other one. So you can see the thread, but of course it matches, and you can't see the thread on this side unless you're like looking for it. And then same with the inside. My little silly buttonhole, functional, but a little bit goofy. This is bag number 2, or I guess bag number 1, completed. If you are interested, the written pattern is in the description. Also, I think I'm going to post this one on Etsy as well to sell. Yeah, don't forget to leave any questions that you have in the comments. If you do buy the written pattern, this video is the perfect place to ask questions about it. And as always, tag me if you create anything on Instagram or TikTok. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Bye.